From Buffalo Wild Wings by the Birdcage in Sioux Falls, welcome to Benchwarmers. Today's featured guests are sports writer for the Argus Leader, Mick Garry. Play-by-play voice for the Sioux Falls Stampede, Jim Olander. Argus Leader sports writer, Matt Zimmer. And our host, Midco Sports Network's Tom Nieman.
Hello, welcome once again to Benchwarmers here at Buffalo Wild Wings in Sioux Falls, just south of the Birdcage. And more brilliance on the panel again this week. It is incredible how we keep getting these people in here that know everything about everything. But it's middle of July, a little bit of a swoon, at least for professional sports right now. But we did have the Euro Cup soccer championship over the weekend. I am contractually obligated to mention this by our producer, Alex Heinert, but Portugal beat France. Anybody watch this?
Jim's a soccer player from what I hear, so I'm assuming he watched.
I watched a little bit. Although I play, I'm not as invested as one probably should be, but I know they won 1-0.
Portugal won 1-0.
Portugal.
Okay.
And France was the favorite.
We need some sort of United States presence to be interested in this or not?
That would be how I would put it, but being that it's the Euro Cup, that'd probably be difficult.
Okay. And any other, the Copa, whatever we just had?
No, that I did watch.
Yeah.
The U.S.
Because the U.S. was involved?
That's right, because the U.S. is involved.
Mick, you're staring at me like...
My interest in the European tournament was when Ireland had a 1-0 lead over France for about 20 minutes. I watched that, and then they went down 2-1, and then my interest waned.
U.S. or Ireland for a little while. All right. Good, Alex, we're good on that. One other thing, of course, going on this week is the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. It will be played by the time anybody sees this, but do you watch, All-Star games to me are kind of dumb, but I do watch the Major League All-Star Game for some reason. The NBA, Pro Bowl and football, no thank you, but the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, I will watch just because of the matchups.
It's still the best one of the All-Star games. You know, the hockey one used to be pretty good, and it seems like they have moved further and further away from any sort of physical contact, I think, and it becomes a little bit more of a shooting exhibition. Basketball's gone the exact same way. The score is, 180 to 170 in some of these games. Yeah. It's kind of hard to not play hard in baseball.
It's more true to the game.
You kind of have to play the game, and some of them have been kind of not so much fun, but there have been a couple that have been fantastic, and you get to see some of the new up-and-coming stars against some of the established veterans. You saw, when Derek Jeter had his victory tour. I think that was at Target Field, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. I watch it every year. Like I said, sometimes it disappoints. But I also like the fact that it's a rule that gets mocked a lot, but I like that every team has to have a player be part of the game, because that gives every fan base an excuse to watch the game.
You be tuned into this?
I like watching it myself. I do like the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Of all of them, you're right. I think that's the one that's fun to watch. Probably for me, the most disappointment is I used to really like the Home Run Derby, and now it's so drawn out and takes forever. I'm just not as interested. That used to be the big thing for me. I used to love watching that.
Really like the All-Star Game. It's the one that where it approximates what they do during the season in actual games. Way better than the other All-Star games, and I guess that's why I really make a point to watch that one, and I don't worry about the others at all.
Yeah, and you get to see Johnny Cueto throw into Trout, and I love those kind of superstar matchups like that. But what about the home field rule that came in several years ago, that the winner of the All-Star game gets home field for their league in the World Series? Is that still a dumb idea, or what do you think?
I don't like it. It used to just be they alternated it,
right,
which I guess didn't necessarily make a lot of sense either, but this seems silly because when you're at the end of the year, if you're the New York Mets or the Kansas City Royals or whoever, and you're like, oh, thanks, guy who blew the save back in July, why don't they just give home field advantage to whichever team in the World Series had the best record? That seems pretty obvious to me.
Because they wanted to add more interest to the All-Star game, which I don't think it does.
It all stemmed from when they had a tie that one year, and people were up in arms. Who cares? Why is that a big deal? I never understood why it was a big deal that there was a tie. It's an exhibition game. There's ties in the spring training all the time. I thought that was silly.
I like it. I think it's something different. Probably does it make the most sense? Maybe not, but to me, that's what draws me in too, is knowing that this actually matters.
It does matter, yeah.
And that at the end of the game, whoever wins, I mean, that's a big deal. And I think guys take a little bit more pride in it. Where I think it's tough is on the managers, because you have to make decisions now that you don't want to be the managers that's blamed for maybe not playing someone that maybe you should have to win, but you also have to be thinking of the team they play for, and are you going to put that player in jeopardy down the line?
I guess anything to keep more interest in it is a good thing.
Yeah, and as far as that being a tweak that some people like or don't like, it's a real minor detail. When you look at the aberrations you see in the other sports for their All-Star games, and hockey's, I think, kind of recognized that this is a silly day, and they've tried to accommodate with some rules, again controversial, but at least they understand the dynamic here a little bit.
All right, Jim Olander is with the Canaries and the Sioux Falls Stampede here in Sioux Falls, and the Canaries in the middle of a tough year right now. They're 17-31, but what's going on with this franchise right now?
Well, I think we might be calling Matt Zimmer here to see if he can help us out and get back onto the field, get him out of retirement. But yeah, it's been one of those years, unfortunately, where I was just talking to Mick before we even went on, that the trouble in a league like this with the American Association is you play 100 games, yes, but it's only over 120 days. So you don't have time for guys to go in 10-game slumps, or guys to get injured and wait for them to come back 3-4 weeks later like maybe you can in Major League Baseball. And we've kind of had a combination of that, where guys are getting injured, or we had a couple guys early in the year that were playing well, they got picked up, and it just seems to be that trend where we just can't get on the right track. We'll win maybe 2 games, but then we'll drop 3 games. And obviously you fall behind early in the season, it's tough to make up those games.
And the American Association is a good brand of baseball. Yeah, Stephen Booyer pitched at South Coast State, was a great pitcher there. He's 1-5 this year. He's struggling in this league. It's a good level of baseball, and we talk about this every year. I don't know where you put it, at an A level or a double A level, or maybe not even that, but it's a good brand of baseball, isn't it?
Well, it is, and the other thing is, when the Canaries first formed and were part of the Northern League, there were teams in towns like Duluth and Madison, Wisconsin, and you look at how the American Association has trended larger. Now you're in a league with St. Paul and Kansas City and Winnipeg and some of these bigger cities where Sioux Falls has kind of become a small market team within their league. Is that an excuse? Yeah, I think to some degree it is. There's not necessarily as much money. It's a tougher place maybe to recruit players to. And their stadium, which when it was remodeled in 2000 was considered, hey, this is one of the best stadiums in the league. Now it's kind of so-so compared to a lot of the other ones.
All right, the other one of the other pro franchises in town, the Sioux Falls Storm. Mick, you cover these guys, and they have the conference championship coming up this weekend, correct?
Yep.
The Storm has been unbelievable in the IFL.
It's really been, it's the flagship of that league, and that's not saying too much. But it is, and it has been for a long time. It's Cedar Rapids this week, and they lost to Cedar Rapids during the regular season, so there's a little wrinkle here. But this one's at home, and my goodness, that team almost never loses at home.
Yeah.
So you're looking at unprecedented success, and they're in the middle of another season. They went 15-1 during the regular season. We're seeing a lot more of the same there from those guys.
All right, we got a poll question coming up later about which a pro team in Sioux Falls, the Stampede, the Canaries, the Storm, and the Skyforce, which are you most invested in? Which are you most interested in? We'll have that coming up a little bit later. Next, though, we're going to talk a little college football with the Coyotes with Mick, Garry, and Matt Zimmer on South Dakota State as football gets going here in less than a month in South Dakota.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports Network is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Welcome back to Benchwarmers. Let's talk some college football. Fall camps will open in about 3 weeks here, and then games will get going the first week of September. Matt Zimmer covers the South Dakota State University Jackrabbits for the Sioux Falls Argus Leader Media, I think it is officially. Nowadays,
my boss will appreciate that.
Yes, he would. South Dakota State was 8-4 last year. Mm-hmm. Are the Jackrabbits poised to take a step forward? I always have a fear they're teetering on one of those years where they're going to win 6 games and go backwards. But maybe the Jacks are beyond that, where they just 8 wins is the minimum and they just keep going up. What do you think?
Well, they've been to the playoffs 4 years in a row now, and last year I think was a year they thought they were poised to maybe take that step, and they probably should have. They were 8-2 going into the season finale, had a very winnable game at Western Illinois, and once they let that get away from them, I don't think they ever recovered. You know, they lost their playoff game. In their playoff game, they came back in the second half. They were down 24-0 at halftime. It was just, you could just sort of sense there was still a hangover from that game the prior week. Now this year, they obviously have an opportunity to keep that streak going of going back to the playoffs, and I think they're going to be a similar team. You know, I think their offense is going to be pretty good again. They'll have two very good quarterbacks. How that's going to play out between
Has Coach Stegelmeyer told you yet which one's going to start?
Yeah, he told me yesterday. I don't know.
Let us know.
I don't know if they, I think they're probably going to pick one this time as opposed to playing them both like they did last year. That'll be something to watch. Their defense was very good last year, and they graduated a lot of good players, so that's another thing to watch. The big thing for me is, they went 8-3 last year before the playoffs against what was a fairly favorable schedule, as favorable as you can get in the Missouri Valley Football Conference. This year it's a little tougher. A few tougher road games. They open at TCU. That's a lot different than opening at Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly expecting them to be 1-0 when they come back from their first road trip this year like they were last year. But I absolutely, the playoffs are within reach. And if you're a Missouri Valley football team and you make the playoffs, that means you're a candidate, a team that's capable of winning a national championship or at least challenging North Dakota State.
7 wins should be enough to get in, and the Jacks, you would think,
Western Illinois got in with 6 last year,
right.
so I think 7 is doable. And right now, again, depending on how the schedule sort of plays out, they kind of look like a 7, 8, 9 win team, 9 being the high end, 6 or 7 being the low end.
Jake Winicky is back, All-American wide receiver. We'll see if he can keep up his incredible numbers that he's put up. The Jackrabbits will host the University of South Dakota on November 11th. Mick Garry is the Argus Leader media guy for the University of South Dakota. 5-6 last year. What's in line for the Coyotes? How competitive are they going to be this year?
I think of something similar. You could have a 6-5. I think they would quietly appreciate quite a bit. They're tough. Defensively, their front 7, I think, is going to be a source of concern there. Defensive line and linebackers. A couple of veterans in there, but they're going to have to put some pretty fresh kids there in those spots. Offensively, I do think they have a chance to be pretty good. They got a lot of their guys. Their playmakers are coming back. It might be exciting at quarterback. That's going to be an interesting part of the fall camp. I'll get some pointers from Matt as to how to deal with the quarterback controversy.
Ryan Sager had been the starter.
Ryan,
would be the starter,
and I would think he would start out camp as number 1. Transfer from University of Minnesota, also a very gifted redshirt who's going to be eligible to play this year, Austin Simmons. So there could be some intrigue in that part of it.
Their home schedule, Northern Iowa, Illinois State, North Dakota State, all the powerhouses in the Missouri Valley. USD has them at home. That's going to be kind of fun.
It'll help. It'll give them, a little bit of an edge there. I don't imagine that the Bison coming to town, they're going to be a little bit ornery after last year, and I don't know that
do you have any explanation for that as USD goes and wins at Fargo, beats North Dakota State, the 5-time national champions? Do you still have any explanation for how they did that?
There were number one, I don't think the Bison were quite ready. They had just come off a really tough game. I can't remember, it was UNI maybe. And then USD played an incredibly clean game. They got all the first downs they needed. Even right to the end, they got a first down when, they would have otherwise opened the door for Bison coming back and winning that game. Ryan Sager played the best game of his career, just not flashy, but made the right decisions throughout the game, ran the offense the right way. And then they made a pressure kick at the end. It was odd. It definitely, you weren't quite sure as you were seeing it progress. It's like, my goodness, this is really going to happen.
It was, but all right, USD and SDSU played some pretty good games the last couple of years. That'd be another hump that maybe the Coyotes think they can get over this year. We will see when that game comes in November. All right, coming up next, back to the national scene a little bit. Tim Duncan retiring this week. It's kind of a new era in the NBA coming up, and advertisements on NBA jerseys. Is this a good thing, or what is going on in the NBA? We'll talk about that coming up next.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports Network is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Welcome back to Benchwarmers. Big NBA news coming on Monday of this week. Tim Duncan says he's going to retire after 19 years all with the San Antonio Spurs, which is a thing in itself. Probably we'll never see something like that again. But Mick, as the elders up here at the table, it's kind of one of those generational things. There's kind of a turnover right now in the NBA with Duncan going, Kobe Bryant is done. It's kind of a generational turn right now in the NBA, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me about George Mikan or something like that.
Remember when he retired?
And contrasting styles between the two of them. Kobe was a popular player for a long time and a kind of a flashy player, played the perimeter and did a lot of things. Duncan was absolutely the opposite. I mean, played the game. I would sure if you looked at his, the film of how he does things with his footwork and how big men are supposed to do things, it would be like excruciatingly, fundamentally, absolutely correct the way he played basketball. And the big thing with him, he had some teammates once in a while, but he stayed healthy. He didn't get hurt too often, and was still playing at a very high level the day.
And you know what else is cool about it is he does it now. There's no farewell tour like there was for Kobe.
I heard he's not even going to be at his own press conference. It's just going to be Popovich.
Yeah,
from what I heard.
I respect that. I like that for some reason.
He's the last guy, too, really, I think, the last college superstar to play 4 years of college basketball. Because he was he went, exhausted his eligibility at Wake Forest. And obviously there are guys who have played in the NBA since then who played 4 years of college basketball, but I don't know if there's anyone since him who obviously could have come out as a sophomore or a junior or whatever and played all 4 years. I mean, I guess that goes to show how old he is and how old we are, that he goes back to an era when people actually played 4 years of college basketball.
That is true. Jimmy, do you get weepy when guys retire like this?
I don't know if I get weepy, but, I think Tim Duncan is, you guys said it. I think how he carried himself on and off the court, speaks volumes. The fact that he's not doing a farewell tour, the fact that, he's just kind of going off into the sunset kind of the way he did. And that's kind of how his career was. It was never about him, and I think that's why people liked him so much. And he was easy to cheer for and made the Spurs easy to cheer for because he worked so hard, but it wasn't him trying to be in front of the camera or making it about himself or talking about how many points he did and how many points he scored. Unlike today, where you could even say, most recently LeBron, it's certainly he played a big part about it, but he makes you know that it was about him, that they're the reason they won.
Is it being older that you like that style? Is that all it is? We like the quiet assassins and not the flashy guys. Is that all it is age?
Who said I like the quiet old guys?
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Good point. One other thought on the NBA. In not this coming season, but the year after, the NBA says they will start putting advertisements on game jerseys.
They did say they're doing that
in
officially?
games. They're going to do this. Is it weird, or has the time just come? Golfers do it.
They do it in the WNBA.
NASCAR, WNBA is already doing it, but it just seems like in hockey and baseball and football and basketball. Is it gauche, or is it just time for that to happen?
I think it's inevitable that they're going to do this. You go into an arena, and there is not one flat plane of any surface that is not advertising something, and this would be the next step. They did hold off a lot for a while in the United States anyway with this, other than with golf and with NASCAR. But you wonder what the limits are going to be. Is each guy going to look like a NASCAR, like a stock car?
Right. Or will it be, I don't know if fashionable would be just a simple something like that. But if the Twins came out with ads on their jerseys, wouldn't that be weird?
It would be weird and a little bit, disappointing, I guess, because you feel like it's a violation of what you're sort of used to growing up. But like Mick said, it's kind of inevitable. And if those are the things that help teams succeed financially or whatever.
It's all about generating revenue.
Right. Sometimes you got to do things you don't like doing.
But you're right. It's got to be, to me, if you put patch, that's probably one thing. Talked about the WNBA, the Lynx, they have the Mayo Clinic, and you don't even see their logo on there. That's a little extreme. That's getting more.
But again, the WNBA isn't necessarily in the same position as some of those other leagues. They kind of got to take what they can get.
Yeah. All right, money. All right, when we come back, our winging it question of the week from the lunchtime crowd here at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports Network is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Welcome back. Time for our winging it question of the week, and for that, here's Carla Metz.
Thanks, Tom. I have Justin Barrett here, who is from Sioux Falls, and he's been watching the Olympic trials lately, so he has a question about the upcoming Olympics in August.
What do you believe is going to be the most interesting event this year?
All right, let's see what the panel thinks.
All right, Mick, Justin wants to know what you're going to be interested in watching at the Summer Olympics in Rio.
I like the running events. I mean, the marathon it's too long to watch, but the rest of the running events are compelling to me. Obviously, you emerge with stories, and it evolves as to what you're interested in.
Yeah.
But running events would be where I'd start.
Jimmy?
Water polo. I don't even need to explain it. Just cool to watch.
It is.
Do they still have basketball, the dream team?
I don't know if it's a dream team, but they have
Clyde
basketball.
Drexler.
That's
not
the fun
playing
thing
this
to
year.
watch. Will anyone compete with the dream team? I do tune in to see how badly they'll beat people.
Yeah. Swimming, to me, is interesting with Phelps back. And I don't know, it just seems like the non-major sports other than basketball and golf and these kind of things are what the Olympics are for and should be about. So Olympics, and will people turn out and go to the Olympics as Olympians with all of the fears going on down in Rio is probably going to be the biggest question. But when we come back, one more segment with our poll question when we return on Benchwarmers.
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports Network is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings.
Welcome back to Benchwarmers, our poll question of the week. And I'm not even sure semi-professional is the right phrase, but which Sioux Falls semi-pro sports team are you most invested in? We thought about interested, but invested, I think, captures it pretty well. Skyforce with 35% of the vote. This is 81 votes between the lunch crowd here and on Twitter. D-League champions, but the Stampede with almost a third of the votes, Jimmy. And I don't think anybody's surprised by that. What's the connection to the USHL and the Sioux Falls Stampede?
Well, I think our fans really enjoy the fact that these guys are on their way up. You saw Kiefer Bellows get drafted in the first round. We've seen numerous players go on to the NHL. So when you're a fan, you kind of feel like a proud parent when you watch these guys move on. I think that's a big connection we have is just the age level of these guys being 16 to 20.
All right, appreciate it, guys. Sioux Falls Storm coming up. Mick's all over that this weekend in the playoffs.
Playoff game, going for their 6th consecutive IFL title.
All right, thanks for watching. See you next week.